is there anything better than sitting down with a contemporary fiction novel and getting lost in someone else's problems? If there is, I don't know what that might be, but we're going to talk about that today on the Rose at Home channel. I am Rose. I am at home and I am so incredibly glad that you have decided to join me while I talk about the top 5, I think, contemporary novels that I have read. I'll be honest, this could have been a top 20, even a top 50. I've read so many over the years and I have loved so many over the years. So it was really difficult to pick a top 5. I decided to try to pick things that I hadn't talked much about before, that maybe most of them are a little bit older, that maybe you haven't heard of, or maybe that flew under the radar that you might want to go back and pick up. So I'm going to start right now. The first book that I want to talk about is so great, and it is called Oona Out of Order, and it is by Margarita Montimore. This is the story of a woman named Oona, and she passes out on her 18th birthday and she wakes up in her 50s. From then on, she lives her entire life completely out of order. Every time it's moving into her birthday, she jumps to a very different year. So instead of living her life linearly like the rest of us, she lives her life out of order. Watching herself make mistakes, knowing she's made mistakes, and thinking about how do I fix them? Can I fix them? How is this all gonna work? It's so much fun. It's just a brilliant idea and it's such a fun read, and I so strongly suggest you give this one a shot. The second thing I wanted to talk about is Lisa Ko's The Leavers, and I think I've talked about this on the channel before, but it's been a long time. This is the story of a young man who was born here in the US, but his mother had immigrated here illegally when she was pregnant with him. They try to do their best to make a living in New York City, but one day when he's in upper elementary school, she goes to work and never comes home again. He ends up getting adopted by a white family. His mother had immigrated here from China, but the family that adopts him are not Chinese. They change his name. They give him a very different upbringing out in the suburbs, not in the city. They have certain expectations for him that he doesn't have for himself. He's dealing with a lot of his emotional trauma from what has happened with losing his mother. We also do get to find out what happened to the mother. So we get both of their perspectives throughout this really heartbreaking story. It's really beautiful. It's not super long. It's absolutely worth the read. If this one missed you and passed you by, I would absolutely give it a shot. If immigration stories, if lost family stories, if adoption stories, if any of that sounds interesting to you, absolutely pick this up. I think you would like it a lot. My next pick won the Women's Prize a number of years ago, and I absolutely love it. I've read it multiple times. It is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. This is a beautiful and touching, and at points heartbreaking, and at points hope-giving novel about a young couple. They are both African American, they are both middle class and upper middle class when they meet up, they're college educated, and they're supposed to have that great life because they did all the things right until the husband is sent to prison for something he didn't do. They are still fairly newlyweds when this happens. So the bulk of this novel is watching what happens to their relationship, watching what happens to them as people as they go through the trauma of what has happened to him and how it affects everything and everyone around them. So it's just absolutely, again, it's beautiful, it's heartbreaking. The writing is chef's kiss. I absolutely love this. If you like novels that have different types of writing, like a good part of this is letters that are written back and forth between the couple. If that type of thing really excites you and makes you excited at the thought of reading something, absolutely. If the plot behind this excites you, any of those reasons, this is an amazing book, and I so highly suggest that you give it a read. In my video on the most hyped books that I think totally deserved the hype, I talked about Taylor Jenkins Reid and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And that's why that book isn't here, because I've already really talked about that, and I do love it. But I love other things by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and so I wanted for this list to talk about Carrie Soto Is Back. I don't think this one gets nearly talked about enough, and it's really good. It is about Carrie Soto, who is raised by her tennis player father. From the time she's very little, she's got a tennis racket in her hand, and she is raised to be the best and to always be the best. So what happens in this book, Carrie has retired and someone else is about to take one of her records, and so she decides that she is going to come back so that she can keep her record or take her record back. And so if you really like tennis and you like sports, this is great, but I don't play tennis. I'm not a sports person, and I still absolutely loved this. If you love reading about strong women, focused women who are doing everything they can to achieve what they feel that they need, this is absolutely a book for you, like sports or don't. But if you also like sports, you'll like this. It's just such a good book. I absolutely loved it. I can't wait to see what's coming out next from Taylor Jenkins Reid. I hope it's in this world, because I absolutely love it. And the fifth book that I picked for this has been behind me. I don't know if you've been able to see it all of this time, but it is Brit Bennett's The Vanishing Half. This is another beautiful, heartbreaking, hopeful, just takes you on the roller coaster of the feels book. This is the story of a set of twins. They are very light-skinned African American, and they end up, I'm not going to give spoilers, but they end up out in the world on their own when they're in their late teens, early 20s. And one of them gets a job that she could only have gotten because they mistake her for white, and she doesn't correct them. So the two sisters end up completely apart. One ends up back in their hometown with her child. The other one lives her life passing as white and gets married, has a family, and has all of the things, but they completely stay apart. So part of it is also the search for the sister. It's so good. If you love family dramas, if you love the story of sisters, especially twin sisters, and following them through the years, if you love stories that also deal with things like colorism, which is a really big part of this book, I think you would really, really enjoy this. These sisters really have stuck with me since I read this. I really enjoy it, and I so think that you would too. So those are my top 5 contemporary picks, and I hope that you pick up at least 1 or 2 of them and give them a read and let me know what you think. If you will do that, write down in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on them. In the meantime, I sincerely hope that you have an absolutely amazing week and that you get to read some absolutely amazing books. Bye, y'all.